Hi, and welcome, Alex. Now, Alex, you've just completed one of my high performance 12-week programs, and thank you so much for coming and speaking to me. So today is really about celebrating your successes. It's been an amazing journey for me to witness your incredible changes. So tell me about that point just before you picked up the phone and we first connected, Alex.
Well, Mandy, I was in a situation where I'd just resigned from my job. So the situation was, it was my 11th job I've had in 10 years, and I felt stuck. So I called seeking advice on change of career. I was at a crossroads, and I thought that was all it was going to be, but I didn't really understand that the work on me was going to totally transform my life for the better.
Yeah, and as I said, when I looked at what you were first looking at, it was about a career change because you wanted to be happier and achieve that level of success. So I'm taking that you are already a bit of a high achiever, Alex.
Yeah, look, I've been quite successful. I've worked in finance for the last 20 years, and I've always been able to leave a job and go to another job straight away. But what I was finding was I was falling into the same frustrations and the same self-sabotage. I'd get to a role, and after a while I'd become disengaged because I was unhappy and frustrated in how the role was progressing. And then I'd switch off and I'd start looking for another job. And the most recent role lasted 3 months, and I thought, you know, this just isn't right. Is it me? Is there something wrong with me? Do I need to do some work on myself to uncover why I keep on following this same pattern? So that was the big driver for me to give you a call.
Cool. And you talk about a pattern. So obviously you'd recognise that you had a pattern, but you mentioned something about being frustrated and not really content at work.
Yes, look, I'd go into a role thinking this is going to be great, but after a certain period of time, I'd have arguments with the voices in my head, and they were saying that you shouldn't be in this role anymore. It just doesn't suit for you. But wanting to be the big provider for my family and support my family and pay the mortgage and all the bills, and because finance is all I've known, I've just very easily gone to another finance role. So I've just jumped from job to job, but the big cloud of unhappiness has followed me all the way through.
So tell me a little bit about, it's such an important topic, about this voices in the head and the arguing and fighting. Tell me a little bit about that, Alex.
So I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I like to do things I like things to be perfect, and I like to also know that I'm in control. So if I'm given a task at work, the perfect example for me was in a role that I had to sell a product. So the main product I had to sell, I was really great at selling that. I had customers who loved me and gave me lots of repeat business. But part of that role was the employer was asking me to sell 3 or 4 additional products on top of the main one I had to sell. The issue I had was with the great relationship I built with the clients, they only needed the 2 or 3. They didn't need the 5. So I was having arguments with myself in my head. Whereas I was saying to myself, I've done the right thing. I've given these clients exactly what they want and they love me. But I've got an employer saying, mate, you've got to sell 5 and you've only sold 3. So I was constantly arguing with myself. I was having arguments as to, I'm doing a great job for the customer, but I'm not doing what my employer wants me to do. So I felt torn. My integrity felt like it was being pulled apart because I wasn't doing what I thought was true to the customer. But then at the same time, to be successful in my role, I wasn't doing all components of what the job had asked me to do.
And having those arguments in your head, which I'll go on to into a minute, and having that sort of conflict and torn feeling inside, how did that impact you? You know, how did you feel?
I felt terrible all the time, and especially at home. It started impacting on personal life. I was really angry, emotionally, getting upset, and fights with my wife and my son. And it got to a point where my wife said, you need to help, you need to go talk to somebody because this isn't healthy. So that was sort of the driver to say, yep, it's time to start working on myself.
And I think it's so important because it's something that I learned so many years ago, and it was one of the main catalysts as to why I do what I do. I used to have a gold medal in arguing with myself, and I think in those days, probably as you experienced, I had no idea that I could control those voices in my head. I had no knowledge about it, and it sounds like you didn't either.
No, but I didn't even know. I just thought that there was something wrong with me. I didn't realise that it was something I could control. The voices were so strong and they were putting myself down. So then I lost a lot of confidence in myself, and it was me telling myself I wasn't good enough, I wasn't worthy. And that was a really hard impact for me personally and professionally.
And it sounds like, look, I see this so often, and having experienced it many years ago, when we argue with ourselves, what we resist persists, and it actually makes it worse. And then I think we get more powerless to change it. Yet I was hearing that you have loyalty patterns, and we know one of your values is to provide for your family. So I guess that caused a lot of inner conflict as well.
Yeah, definitely, because the priority was to make sure that there was a roof over my family's head and I could pay all the bills. So that was important, to turn up and do the job the best that I could every day, but not doing what my employer, not being able to do the full role that I was employed to do, because it sort of torn me apart with my values. It was a really hard situation to be in.
So the moment you decided to commit, and I know you were ready, how did you feel when you made that decision?
I was pretty excited. When we had our first chat and we went through it all, you were able to straight away identify the problems I was having and put them in layman's terms, language I could understand within 5 minutes. So I knew that you were able to put me on the right path to get it looked at. And I knew it was going to be hard before I got into it, but it was actually because I was fully committed and I wanted to get into it straight away. The journey wasn't as hard as what I thought it was going to be, because I was ready.
Yeah, and you were ready. And I think you mentioned, putting it into easy to understand terms. I've heard that from other clients, and I think it's so important. There's so much information out there and so many books to read, but what people are missing are a simple plan, somebody that can help them and guide them, and the how-to. Because part of what I do on all my programs is I help you and I equip you with tools to help you manage your mindset, your emotions, take action, and make the changes that you want. So during our journey together, and you were a fantastic client, because you always did your home play and really committed, which obviously, being a high achiever, I had that expectation. And you, as you said, you were quite a perfectionist, so you always wanted to make sure you did it. But what were some of the aha moments and game changers that you got along the way?
There were a few along the way. Probably the first one was, one of the first exercises in the program was doing a wheel of life, where you're working out what are the most important things to you in your life. And for me, my family were number one important, but all my energy was being focused in a job and in work that I was unhappy in. So I had a lot of this negative energy from work coming home, and to the people that were most important to me, I just had the wrong vibe and the wrong energy, and I wasn't putting in the right levels of what I should have been at home. So it was good to identify that, and then realise that I need to skew that around, and family needs to come first. Work is important because you need to provide and got to have satisfaction at work, but I just had that balance all wrong.
And how did that impact for you, knowing that you had the balance wrong? What shifted there for you?
Oh, immediately open conversations with the family, and now we've introduced a few. We have a weekly celebration where we catch up and celebrate being together and being happy, and we take a turn each week to pick the activity that we're going to do, and trying to be just intentionally more present with the family as well. So I may have a bad day at work or out training or out and about, but as soon as you come home, it's making sure that we're there and we're switched on and actually there for the family.
And I believe you've taught some of the techniques that I've shared with you with your family and your son in particular.
I have, yeah. So my son, he wanted a Garmin watch, and we said we'll do a rewards program where if you can show us that you consistently can show consistent good behaviour, we will give that to you. So he had to earn a point every day, and he got his 40 points. So it was over a bit over 2 months for him to achieve that, but he just got his watch on his birthday this last weekend. So we're really proud of him, and he was proud of himself to show that he was creating good habits and good behaviours to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, and those are the sort of stories I love, because I think some people don't realise when you work on yourself and you shine your light more fully and step into your potential, the ripple effect out into the world is immense. And obviously our children are the future generation. So, you know, to teach your son at a young age, you know, certain disciplines, certain habits is phenomenal. Now, I remember along the way, there was one other insight that was to do with a pattern that you ran at work. And I think that was quite an insightful moment for you. Would you like to tell me a little bit about that one?
Yeah, look, when we did our shadow values, I identified my shadow values. And for those who don't know, shadow values are the values that make you get up every day. They're the ugly ones sometimes, like the needing to be right, the needing to be perfect, the needing to be in control. And for me, one of mine was the needing to be right, with the needing to be right and needing to be in control. When I was dealing in my role with people, I had to be very thorough and very careful. And in a sales role, I was selling very well to people of similar personality to me. But people who are a different personality, and I wasn't reading it, who just wanted it straight away and didn't want all the bits and pieces and the thoroughness, they were switched off and disengaged because I just wasn't cutting through. So it was a big eye-opener to me to realise that for me, sales wasn't the right energy vibe for me. I love the process and I love the helping of the people, but the pressure and I didn't feel the urgency. Urgency is important in sales, and I just didn't have that urgency to want to push people. I wanted people to take their time to make sure they had trust in me and the product that I was selling. And I just felt that I missed out on a lot of sales because I just was very straight line, and I missed out on those people who just wanted to sell quickly, and I wanted to go through that same process every time.
And I remember that it was very insightful for you, because when we understand and become aware of our patterns, and obviously most of them are hidden from our conscious awareness, which is why it takes someone else to help us clean them out, it almost shifted your whole focus on what you might do next, or how you'd show up at work differently.
Yeah, definitely. I think also part of that, I mentioned it earlier in the chat just now, was the biggest game changer was just my inner voices. So for me, integrity and doing the right thing is important. And from a customer's perspective, I was doing the right thing by what they wanted. But from the employer's perspective, I wasn't, because they wanted me to sell more products than what the customer actually needed. So I had this big internal fight of, I've done the right thing by the customer, but I haven't done the right thing by the employer. And then that was making me feel uneasy, and it gave me a feeling of not feeling worthy or good enough, because I felt that I wasn't being successful in my role for that. Whereas if we were judging my role based on how I was perceived by the customers and the product that they needed, I would have been an A+ every time. But I just wasn't comfortable stepping outside of my own personal integrity for the extras that they didn't need.
And having inner conflicts, because we can't see our inner patterns, is as you said, it can be so frustrating. It erodes happiness, it erodes self-worth, it impacts in so many areas of our business. So now that you've made peace with those voices and you've reconciled many of your conflicts, how do you feel now?
Oh, I'm a total different person. When it first happened, I had a day where I didn't have any arguments at all in my head. And I got to the end of the day and I thought, something doesn't feel right. And I didn't know what it was. And then I just realized that I hadn't argued with myself all day. I went outside and I was at the beach and I was able to look at the waves and the ocean and the sky, and everything just looked like it was more brighter and vivid. Like I just felt totally clear. And it was just an amazing feeling to be clear and having no anger.
And hey, when we move through the veil of arguing with ourselves, it just like clears the lens, and you can see so many things and opportunities present. And I think for, if anyone's, you know, listening to this and they've got those inner battles and inner conflicts, it's so important because it erodes our life, our happiness and everything. And I had a client yesterday who I was talking to, and he had a part of him that wanted freedom and a part of him that wanted family. And it was causing really, really great turmoil. And I see it often. What difference will this make, or has all this made to you now, looking forward, Alex?
It's made a huge difference at home. So my relationship with my son and my wife is a lot stronger. Unfortunately, my wife's got the same needing to be right and a perfectionist like me. So we don't see eye to eye sometimes, but now I can identify. So when we're having a conversation and it starts to get a bit heated, I can just say to myself, okay, Alex, that's your perfectionist voice. You need to be right. So then I can just back off and let that go and say, okay, yep, that's cool. And just deal with it later when it's not so heated and we're both in a calm state.
Yeah. And I think the wonderful thing is, you know, I'm now going to work with your wife. So that is awesome. So you both have worked on yourselves, which will have the most amazing ripple effect for your family and everything, because something that people might not be aware of, when we make these changes, they're not like a massage, you have to have another one. They are actually, when you use the tools like you have and you use them consistently, then we change our patterns and our programs and you take them with you forever. So they're generational and transformational. And you obviously saved a bit more energy by not arguing with yourself, which leads me on to something that people don't know yet, but it's very passionate to my heart, is once upon a time I was an Ironman triathlete. So you're training for Ironman and triathlons. How has the shifts, which was probably unexpected because you came here with the lens of career and work and shifting things, how have the changes that you've made a difference in your training?
It's transformed training as well. So previously, when a training session got hard or tough with a negative or not a strong mindset, I just found it easy just to back off and not keep on pushing hard or just quit if a session was too hard. So with the strategies that we've put in place and creating regular positive habits, I'm now able to keep a clear mind, focus, and when the session gets harder, just focusing on being in the moment and pushing through those harder sessions. So it's really helped me go to the next level, both mentally strength, because Ironman's tough. It's anywhere from an 11 to 15, 16 hour day, depending how fit you are. And there's times where you zone in and out and it's really hard. So to give myself those skills to stay in the moment and stay focused, I think that's going to be a huge help.
Great. And tell us when is the big race, Alex?
81 days and counting.
Wow. And tell us, you're doing Port Macquarie?
Yeah, doing Ironman Australia at Port Macquarie. So it'll be my second Ironman and I'm hoping to shave a few hours off from my first attempt.
Yay. Well, hey, I did when it was at Foster, so very dear to my heart. And I did I did get under 11 hours for my first one. So let's see what you can do. But as you say, you know, when we're arguing and battling, it wastes energy because we're energy beings. And when we shift it, you know, as you say, you get more confident, you'll have more energy, you have more resilience, and it will make a massive difference in your training. And one small thing we did is I made you a very short recording to help you with your training, but part of it is equipping you with whatever tools you need to help you shine. So awesome. So lastly, is there, what would be, if you had to sum all of that up, what would be your biggest insight that you have and the biggest difference it's made that you could encourage or share with someone else?
Is that you can control the voices in your head. It is a lot of work. And the hardest, my wife's about to start the journey. And I said to her, the hardest thing you're going to have is you've got to have those hard conversations with yourself. There's things about yourself that you possibly don't like or you don't want to work on. But until you face the things that you don't like, you're not going to make those advances. So I had to go deep down and say some home truths about things I didn't like about myself, but I had to identify those to be able to correct them. Yeah,
it's so true. And I think that's something I learned so many years ago. It was the hardest thing for me to ask for help because I think you're quite an independent high achiever and would have thought I can get there on my own, like so many people do. Yet one of the greatest things is realizing that we can't get there on our own. And I did mention to you, that we have to dig down, which can be uncomfortable, but we all know that no growth happens in the comfort zone, and we need to make the unfamiliar familiar and the familiar unfamiliar. So obviously my role is helping you make it as easy as possible, keep a supportive place, and equip you with the tools and techniques. Just as I did many years ago, it transformed my world, and it's just so fantastic to see you really embrace the program, make it work for you, and have such a positive ripple effect. And I do hope that most of all, you're going to blitz that Ironman and qualify. I think you want to get to Hawaii is one of your big goals. And most importantly, you keep being a shining example and ripple out to everybody else. So what would be, lastly, your message, if there's someone else that's stuck, been trying to do it on their own, because we can't see our hidden patterns, what advice would you give them?
Don't be afraid. Don't think about the cost or the time that it's going to take. At the end of the day, there's nothing more important than you. So if you're unhappy for the rest of your life, and you could go back and say, if I would have done something 15, 20 years ago, now's the point in time where you can say, now's the time to work on me. So I look back now and I wish I would have done this 10 years ago. I wasted 10 years of my career bouncing from job to job purely because I didn't understand that I was doing the wrong type of job for my personality and what my values were.
So do you believe that the investment you paid, because obviously working with people costs money, was worth it?
Oh, definitely.
Great. And I think people often don't invest in themselves. They invest in their cars, but they don't realize that they're their greatest potential. And an investment now is almost an investment for the future. And on the overall scheme of life, it's such a small thing. And well done. And I applaud you for making that decision, investing in yourself, and also putting 100% into your program. So thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciate your time, and congratulations. I know we'll stay in touch, and I look forward to hearing the next story and the new work and job and the Ironman training, and obviously the great benefits and ripple effect it will have in everybody you meet, and the most important people in your world, your family. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Mandy.